That's not what I want you to do. And obviously I'm being facetious here, tossing my straps all around. Look, software engineering advice on the internet can be ridiculous to follow. You have people debating different technical solutions, like which language is the best, which tech stack, tabs or spaces. And on the non-technical side, you have things like what's the best way to get promoted, right? Like just work hard, work on the most visible high impact problems, or even just jump from company to company and you can get to higher positions faster. Now, I know it can be ridiculous to follow, but let's face it, you're probably here because you want to hear some software engineering advice. Hi, I'm Nick Cosentino, and I'm a principal software engineering manager at Microsoft. And I'm not your manager. Well, I guess statistically speaking, I might be your manager if you're one of my employees watching this video. I wanted to make this video in particular because there's some stuff that I've been seeing on social media, and I had this recent event at work that really made me think when I was giving advice, I need to consider that I'm not your manager as I'm giving it. I want to share some of this with you so that you can help navigate some of your own opinions as you're hearing different things on the internet. Before I jump in, just a quick reminder to check the pinned comment for my free weekly newsletter and my courses on Dome Train. So at work, aside from managing teams of engineers at Microsoft, I also do what's called early in career mentorship. And we have these things called early in career mentorship circles. In this case, I'm one of the 2 people leading a particular circle of early in career mentees that we have. And these are such a cool opportunity, not only for me because I get to help mentor, but for all of the mentees that are early in career, they get a chance to ask me and the other person that I'm working with, and this rotates, there's many different circles, they get to ask us all these different questions about how to navigate early things in their career, as the name might suggest. And in that case, that means that they get to ask me, who's at principal level, a lot of different things. I have a manager background, so I can help them with that. And I'm often paired up with a software engineer or a project manager, or product manager. Now, we do end up having these sessions as a group where we can come together and talk about some hot topics because, time and time again, there's these really common themes that come up, like how do I have conversations with my manager? How do we navigate promotions, rewards, things like that? What's cool about these groups is not only do we have these sessions once a month all together where we come together in a conversation, but we also get to do one-on-ones between myself and the other mentor and the individual mentees that are in the group. Now, I've done this a few times. I think this is my 3rd time doing early in career mentorship, but something really dawned on me this time. And that's when I was giving advice to people, I started realizing, look, I'm not your manager. I need to be careful about what I'm saying because a lot of the way that I frame the advice I want to give is if I was your manager. And that means that if I'm trying to say, hey, go talk to your manager this way, that's how I want to be talked to, right? I need to be very careful about the advice I'm giving. And this is the first time I really started to realize that. And it made it difficult because I found that in order to provide advice, I have to think about how their manager might perceive it, right? If they haven't given me the full context about how their team works, what their manager's like, and truthfully, I'm never really going to know that unless I'm on the team, then I have to start making assumptions about how they can work with their manager. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples, right? Because I want this to be practical. I want you to walk away with this, not it just being story time with Nick, right? I hope you like my stories, but I want to let you walk away with something that's useful here. And I'm going to follow this up with a couple of more things that aren't early in career mentorship. It's going to be something from LinkedIn that I think is super important that we touch on. And I'm going to wrap up the video with pointing you in the direction of the most important software engineering skill that you can learn. So one of the hot topics in the early career mentorship circles in my one-on-ones was really about how you have conversations with your manager. If you want to start bringing up career conversations in particular, how do you talk to your manager about that? The advice that I traditionally like to give here is exactly how I would like to be approached. So I say to them, look, if you have to spring it in a one-on-one conversation, that's okay. I think if you're expecting a lot of detail in that conversation, it's the first time it's come up. You might not get all the detail you're looking for, but I would start providing you as much detail as I can about the different things that I think are a priority for you at your current level. Then I follow by saying, but if you could give me a little bit of notice, like even if it was the morning of or something and we were meeting in the afternoon, I could follow up on that. I could give you some tips and I could give you a little bit more detail than being put on the spot. And while I think this is probably pretty true for most engineering managers, it might not be true at all for some of them. I've had to do this kind of thing a lot. I've had to have career conversations. I like prioritizing it. I think it's important. Some other engineering managers, maybe they think it's important, but they don't prioritize it. They don't actually do it as often as they want to or think they should. And that might mean if they have to go into a conversation like this, they need a lot more preparation. It might mean that if you ever bring it up and it's sprung upon them, that they're totally not ready, They're going to want to crawl into a corner. They're not ready to talk about it. They might need a week in advance to prepare. They might want to write some notes. I actually can't speak for all managers, right? It's not fair for me to give someone advice saying, here's what I would want, if it's not going to be the manager that they're working with. So I was trying to be very careful about that because it came up in every single conversation that I had that day. Now, one other really popular topic that came up was, what should I focus on when I'm starting off under my manager, right? I'm new to the job, I'm new to the team, I'm new in my career. What's a priority for me, right? Like, what should I be doing in order to get promoted? And I have been more careful about answering this one in the past. So what I don't like to say is, well, you need to start working on projects that look like this. They have to be this particular type. This is what you need to be doing. You want to deliver at this certain pace. I can't say things like that because I am literally not your manager. And I think the most important thing you should be doing is having that conversation with your manager. The person who can give you the best answer to that question is the person who is managing you. It sounds kind of obvious, right? But I think a lot of people avoid the conversation with their manager about this topic because it's uncomfortable, right? You have to basically say to someone, what do you expect me to do, right? Like, I want you to be very specific, or you want it framed a certain way. You want to really understand. And it's a little weird. Like, we don't do that often with people. And if it's a new person that you're trying to build a trust relationship with, that you report to, I can understand that that's uncomfortable, but you need to do it. You need to do it, or else you're going to be uncomfortable the entire time trying to figure out if you're doing the right work to be on track for promotion, if you're even, in your boss's frame of mind, doing the right things at all. Are you working on high priority things with visibility? Are you working at the right pace? All of these things you're going to feel very uncomfortable about because you won't have answers about your boss's perspective. Now, the flip side is, again, me as a manager, if someone came to me and wanted to have this conversation, I want to have it with them too. Yeah, it can be uncomfortable even for me, right? Like, I have to make sure that I'm prepared to give the right information, that I can be aligned with them, give them, actionable advice. It can be uncomfortable, it can be challenging, but it's important. For other managers, they might find it so wildly uncomfortable that they don't know what to do. Like, I don't know, just do your work, right? Do the priority thing that we talked about in stand up. Like, I don't know how to tell you how to be more specific about the work you're doing. They might just find it uncomfortable. And you might be saying, well, they must be a crappy manager then if they can't do it. Like, I don't know if that's fair to say. I don't think it's a good spot to be in personally, but I'm sure there's lots of managers like that. And the reality is, if you're a software engineer, you might have a manager like that. You have to find ways that you can work with them in order to try getting that information. And just to wrap this up, one of the last things on both of these topics that I said to these early in career mentees was that if you leave these conversations feeling like, cool, thanks, but I still don't really get it, like it's not enough for me to understand, like, follow up with them. And again, this is advice that I would want people to tell me, thank you, but I need more details, I need more clarification. Could we talk about it again? I think that most managers should be open to this. If it wasn't clearly communicated, following up is okay. But again, you're going to want to feel out that relationship with your manager, understand how they want to communicate, and work with them on it. Ultimately, it's going to come down to getting a good communication pattern with your manager and making sure you're having some of those uncomfortable conversations if they're not already happening. Okay, so that's going to wrap up the advice that I was giving to these mentees and how I had to try and shape it because I'm not their manager, right? I have to think about what's more generic advice that's still useful. Now, this next topic that I want to go over is from LinkedIn. I've seen it come up in a few different places over a different period of time, and it's very much related to this earlier topic, but it's not necessarily geared specifically for early in career engineers. It's probably more junior, but it could still be senior engineers. It could be people mostly new to teams and things like that too. And the advice is really framed around like, what's the best way to get promoted, right? Like, if you're working in this job, what's the best and fastest way that you can get promoted? And it's not going to be a direct quote, but it's something like, go solve the biggest problems for your manager. Or another way that I've seen it come up is, go solve problems that make your manager's life easier. And here's where I'll say, look, I'm not your manager, but I really don't need you going out of your way to try and make my life easier. If you want, sure, you could come over, take the garbage out, you could walk the dogs. I'd love to have my house clean too. That would absolutely make my life easier. That's not what I want you to do. And obviously I'm being facetious here, tossing my straps all around, but I think the important thing is that I don't need you to go out of your way to try and optimize parts of my process. That's not something I need you to do. That's something I need me to do. What I need you to do is focus on the things that we've talked about together, right? We've talked about high priority things. We've talked about your focus areas for growing in your career. I want you to focus on those things. But like I said, I'm not your manager. So that advice that I'm reading on LinkedIn, that actually might really work well for some people. It might work well with you and your manager. It's not actually fair for me to say that it's not good advice. And just to balance this out, because I gave you my own opinion, if I were to try and think about a whole different perspective on this, yeah, maybe there's someone who's a new engineering manager, right? They're trying to figure out, how can I manage effectively? Maybe they're new to the team. They're trying to figure out the different processes, how to spend their time, right? Like they have these reports they have to put together. They have to start analyzing numbers that are coming out of this system week over week. Yeah, it might actually be useful for you to go spend time trying to say, hey, look, I can go tackle some of this stuff, right? I can go do this for you and make your life easier. And I think what's important to recognize here, and maybe where I was having some friction with this advice, you're actually finding things that are high priority. Your manager might be doing it because it is high priority and they haven't figured out how to delegate it yet. So yeah, I wanted to back up on my stance on this advice when I first read it, because I was thinking, what, you're just going to try and go out of your way to please your manager, find anything that you can do and try and get promoted. But I don't really think that was the intention. I think that this can be useful if you're going out of your way to find high priority things that maybe your manager is spending time on. For people on my teams and for people that manage like me, I'm hoping those conversations about what your priorities are already happening. I don't want you to have to try and figure out on your own what the priorities are. I do think you need to be the driver in your career and be proactive, but I would much rather you be proactive and try and talk with me about what you think priorities should be, right? You think you might see these things as a priority. I'm going, great, cool, to grow in your career, focus on these things. Here's the business priorities. We get on the same page and we set you up for success. Like, that's what I would want, but I'm not your manager. So you need to have the conversation with your manager to find the right priorities to focus on. When you are reading advice on the internet, it might seem polarizing, it might be something you don't agree with, it might be something you strongly agree with. I highly recommend you try to think about different perspectives of this. Think about the context, think about the scenario, and see how it can be applicable to you and your situation without just making assumptions about it. And like I said, at the end of this video, I have the most important software engineering skill that you could possibly focus on that cannot be disputed. And if you want to see that, you can watch this video next. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.